Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Gaming on the Block. I'm Metamona, here with my friend Annie, bringing you the hottest topics in Web3, gaming, NFTs, and of course, the metaverse. No TSG tonight, Annie and I are in charge, so let's make it epic.
Absolutely. This is one of those moments where you have a third cast member who has to step out for a bit. You got to shoulder the load. We're going to do what we can to continue soldiering on. But yeah, I think TSG, if you're out there listening at this moment, we love you, man, and we look forward to seeing you back with us next episode. For our audience, he is understandably unavailable. If you follow Illuvium, because he has about 1 million videos that he's trying to make with all of the candidates for the next governance cycle for Illuvium. So all the best wishes for him and for the project.
But you know what I say? Wag me, guys. Wag me. Not to worry. We got this. Annie and I right here. We got a bunch of hot topics for you. Annie, why don't you hit us with the hot topics tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about game discovery. We're going to hit on probably the most controversial token swap in the Web3 gaming space of the year with Gala. Then we're going to wrap up with a focus on governance in Web3 gaming projects. So the question, is it necessary? Is it real? What does it actually look like going forward? Mono's super excited for a lot of these topics because they are going to really determine the future for a lot of projects in the sector. When we think about onboarding new users, a lot of people focus on the onboarding experience and wallets and setting up your own MetaMask and everything. The question, though, for me is it the case that wallets and onboarding is as essential as just finding users in the first place for the games? And I think probably we just need to find people who want to come and play games and get the good games in front of them as they're launching. A lot of the onboarding topics, I think, are going to be worked out by the infrastructure players. So let's dive into this a little bit. As you've talked to people that are knowledgeable about Web3, we know that gaming is a hot focus area. How do you think people are going to find Web3 games in general, though, if they're not in the crypto space?
So as far as discovery, right, in Web3, let's use Elixir as an example here. I would say Elixir, for example, could incorporate Web3 features like decentralized payment option, rewards for early adopters, etc. Right? They could also be using NFTs. I think for moving forward, we're going to see a lot of games using NFTs and as in-game assets to attract users and drive interest, right? But also communities are important, as we know in Web3. Communities could also be used as leverage too, to help spread the word about games and attract new users. So I don't know who is going to attract who and who's going to bring in what. But what I do see is, and I've always said this, it's going to be a collaboration of Web 2 games and Web 3 games. In Web 3, utilizing Web 3 elements like NFTs, communities, and so on and so forth. That's how I kind of see it. How about you?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting split here. If you think about how players find games today, the question of like which device or which medium they're using, whether it's a PC or console or mobile games, isn't as important as it used to be, because there's a lot of crossover now where games are going to launch on multiple different platforms. I think it's now more content driven and community driven. In a lot of cases, these launchers have a lot of power in terms of what products they put in front of people, right? If I go to Steam, the majority of games that I download on Steam, I'm going to find from browsing through the games that they recommend for me. For sure, there's going to be a lot of games that I might have someone give me a referral for that I want to try out. But a lot of times I'm just sort of mindlessly scrolling. I'm like, oh, this looks like an interesting game. I'll add to my watch list. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, I get a notification that it's on for a discount rate that seems good. And I'm like, okay, why not? I'll give it a shot. And so I think a lot of these launchers and discovery platforms have an outsized influence in the games that we consume. So for me, it's really an interesting question. Is that going to be the case? In Web3, we've also got the question around the blockchain that a game is on. And so, for holders that have a certain wallet set up, It's not just, is the game mobile or PC based? Is the game PC based and it's on IMX, or is it mobile and it's on Polygon or Arbitrum or whatever the chain might be? You have all these other layers, and so I'm really curious which of those will prove to be meaningful distinctions for players in the future, versus which of those are going to kind of fade in the background as the tech evolves.
Well, don't forget, we're creatures of habit, right? So there's always going to be certain elements of Web 2 that's going to carry into Web 3. Like when you were talking about scrolling and seeing, what your recommended games are, that habit is going to continue, right? But I think what's going to be different this time around, especially with Web 3, because it's so community driven, you're going to get a lot of community buzz and rewards. There's a lot of rewards that are coming out of Web3 features. So I think you're going to get these communities that are going to promote the game, and then you sign up, there's going to be a rewards here. If you get into this skin or get into that NFT or in this game asset, you're going to get rewards. And the higher you go, more rewards you get. I see it a hybrid, if you will. But for me, it's going to be very community driven, I feel.
I think that's fair. Most people, and regardless of what product we're talking about, whether it's a vehicle or it's a backpack or it's an NFT or a video game, most people are going to listen to people that they trust and that they're are part of their community. And as long as that's the case, we're always going to see this sort of scaling effect. When a community is really strong, they're bringing in new members. They're explaining the real value proposition of a particular product to each other. All of a sudden, you get this positive network effect. And then on top of it, you now add the situation where, in many cases, they're also like co-owners in the product to some degree, whether it's through NFTs or tokens or governance structures. It's really a positive cycle. You mentioned being incentivized and having rewards programs in place. Do you think that we're going to see that continue with let's call it loyalty programs on steroids or whatever through this next cycle, or is it going to evolve to be something different than even what we have today?
That's a good question. I think it's both. I think what you get in Web 2 you'll see that in Web 3, but I also think that, remember, Web 3 is going to be more immersive, right? So the difference here is that you're going to have these immersive experiences where it's not just rewards based on your play, but it's rewards based on your contribution as well, right? Because Web 3 what is the premise? Creators economy, right? So you're here to create an ownership, right? So bring those two elements into it. You're going to be rewarded for creating. I mean, look at Sandbox. Sandbox wants you to come and build. So it's not just about the game rewards, it's about creating and getting rewards for contributing.
Yeah, and I think that carries over, right? It's both going to be true within the game with content that can be built in, whether it's artwork or characters or levels or maps or whatever. It's also going to carry over outside, where you see projects that are using really creative token structures to now incentivize not just within their game, but outside as well, for content creation, moderation in servers, for governance structures, and so forth. So I think these can be very interesting, immersive economies of the players. And I don't mean them like a play to earn sense, but in a sense where you actually have a way that you can incentivize people to be a part of what you're building in a way that you can't otherwise. So I think that's going to be a really interesting process to watch evolve as these projects begin launching in this next wave.
Yeah, for sure. And the way, and I hate this, but games are getting harder and harder in Web3 too, because they're becoming a lot more challenging, which I hated, but I know a lot of people out there love it. I just want to jump on turtles and say, it's me, Metamona.
Exactly.
But there's no more of that, and it's more of these, very strategic games. I work with Colonize Mars, and Colonize Mars has a realism aspect to their game, right? So when your contribution is not just to the game, it's to the science of colonizing Mars. So you actually have to think, right? You actually have to use skills, and I think that's the big differentiator between Web3 games games and Web 2 games as we start to build this next iteration of internet and gaming.
I think that's right. That skill cap continuing to grow is only going to get larger over the next couple of years. It'll be really interesting to see how projects continue to monetize and reward, because I have some concerns about the reward only the top players model that we have, where the winners of a tournament are going to be rewarded with tokens or NFTs or whatever it might be. Because in a lot of cases, I think we're going to get to the point where you need that, but you also need just some participation content built in, because I'm concerned that we're going to see, whether it's AI or like AI assistance solutions, that end up really, let's say, spoiling the true competitive aspect of a lot of these game platforms. I mean, you can look at it in terms of like aimbots that assist you in an FPS game. But as AI technology evolves, and I know this is the buzzword, there's a lot of hype right now. A lot of that's going to die down because it's unfounded. But there are very real advancements that are occurring in the sector. And so if something can be heavily monetized, it will be. And this is true for being able to be uber competitive in games. And so I think as the sector emerges with AI being put to even more and more usage, because you can win $1 million in Dookie Dash, now all of a sudden you've got all kinds of problems that you didn't have before, when games were just for mostly pride and the sense of competition. When now you've got real money on the line, there's a lot of incentives for people to cheat, or even if it's not cheating, to try and walk on that that line that we don't know. Where is that gap where you say, okay, this is too much assistance from from an AI versus, well, this is just a helper for me as I play, and this is allowed and that's not.
We could literally go down a rabbit hole with AI, so I won't say much on that. What I will say is that I feel, yes, right now AI is a double-edged sword, but I think what you're going to see in this environment, you're going to see AI doing a lot of the heavy lifting and leaving the rest for everybody, right? Whereas before, if you needed make an NFT, maybe you had to hire a designer, but now AI can help you do that, and then you do the rest. So I think AI is going to, if anything, democratize content within these environments, so that everyone has a chance to create. And that's the cool thing about AI, that now everyone has an opportunity. And that's what I like about it. But we won't go down that rabbit hole. This is a dangerous rabbit hole.
It is. Yeah, one of my favorite tweets that I saw last week was, I think it was Board Elon and Brooks from Noor, that they both tweeted, the benefit of AI is that the bar has never been lowered to creating a game. The risk of AI is that the bar has never been lower for someone to create a game, right? And so you have lots of opportunity, but you also have a lot of challenges that's going to bring. And again, I am a firm believer that the market will evolve and we'll see better solutions. And overall, there's generally progress, right? There are negative elements that get introduced over time. But if you look at games now compared to even 10 years ago, it's night and day difference in terms of the quality that you can put out as a game dev studio.
Exactly. We'll talk about this 3 years from now again. See how far we came. Well, I'm going to let you take us into our next topic, which is our good friends Gala. So I'll let you hit us with what we're covering, and then if you want, I can jump into it.
Absolutely. So Gala is an interesting project, especially right now. There's a lot of back and forth going within the community, within the broader sector. Two big topics in just the past few weeks here. One is their V2 token redeployment, and they've announced on May 15th, so probably about the time this episode is airing, they're going to be redeploying their token with some updates for security and additional functionality that's been put in to where the project has more control over making future adjustments to the token moving forward. The second topic is a really interesting tweet that the CEO put out, and we're going to share that in a minute, that is causing...
They could not let the CEO get on social media. Who let him on?
This is the problem. You got to keep those CEOs off of content creation. You never know what they're going to say. So we'll come to the tweet in a second here. But in terms of the token, this was the first news that broke pretty recently. Give us your take on the Gala token redeployment. I thought thought the blockchain was immutable. You can't change it when there's a token out, right?
Well, you can upgrade your token though. Well, depends what your definition of change is, but you can upgrade it.
Yeah, and I'm being a little facetious here because part of the risk with all of these projects is even tokens and NFTs that can't be changed, what will often happen is the project will say, we're abandoning that first version and we're just going to go to a
Right.
second version of the token or the
Right.
NFT through whatever process, a burn process or an airdrop or redeployment. This is the piece that a lot of folks miss when they talk about the immutability of the blockchain. Social acceptance of a particular asset matters more than anything else because otherwise you just have a dead token. And so this is the case with Gala holders for V1. So they really didn't get a choice in the matter. So
Right.
to your point, let's talk about your thoughts on the
Well,
V2 token.
yeah, and by the way, when you know there's going to be a lot of people that have Gala and they're not looking at it, and they're going to come back in 4 months and they're going to be like, what the hell happened? Because they didn't read, they didn't go on Discord. This is going to happen with a bunch of people. So it's important to, I mean, if you hold these tokens, it's important to stay on their Discord and keep up with, any upgrades like this one. But anyway, I digress. I mean, I think Gala needed to upgrade their token so that they could do what they needed to do with their ecosystem. They got somewhere over 28 games that are going to be using the Gala token. So every game, every developer, every publisher is going to have to use the token in different ways. So it needs to be flexible. And before they start utilizing the token, they need to make sure the coin can do what it needs to do. Obviously, the coin is going to be used as gas and have certain mechanisms for their new burn tokenomics as well. So to me, I'm not concerned about the upgrade because it seems like it would be the right move for Gala to upgrade. But I will say this, you might want to call this criticism, but I will say when Gala says things like, we need to upgrade our token contract to match our new direction, it tells me something. It tells me that the team doesn't really have the best foresight when it comes to tech and what they're creating, perhaps, their ecosystem. And maybe that's why they're kind of changing directions. I'm not sure. But I think Gala committed to a lot of projects before they really realized their stride, which is being a game publisher and not so much a game creator. I don't know. I mean, I love Gala. I love the team, but that would be my one criticism that I would give, which is they may not have it all together as much as we think they do. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think it's a fair take. As someone who's building very heavily with Ethlizards and works with a lot of other projects, I definitely see the need for all of these, whether you're a game development studio, you're a publisher, you're an infrastructure player, to have the flexibility to allow them to make adjustments in the projects, right? And this is a theme that I see repeated in every community I'm in, and all the projects that we see online, where there's always this resistance to change because it's Web3, and that I think comes from maybe a place of wanting stability in an industry that's very volatile, which I totally get. But also the idea that you would expect a project to never change any part of their structure, whether it's their economic models, whether it's the tech that they're using, is pretty silly, right? We wouldn't expect that from any Web2 organization. And so I think it's always fair for a team to review, here's the structure that we have today for one of our assets, and does it make sense to go forward? Now, the risk comes in how you perform that evaluation, what you're solving for when you decide to make a tech change like that, how you communicate it to your community, as well as like how are you abiding by the agreements that you've made in the past with your current community, and weighing that versus whatever you need to do to push your project forward. So I think there are right and wrong ways to do all of those. In this case, I was pretty mixed about it, to be honest. I definitely see some of the need. I wasn't so thrilled at the communication because it seems like the community was caught pretty off guard for it, and and there's never a good time, a good way to roll that out. But I think a lot of more transparent feedback, town halls, AMAs, and so forth, to begin putting the idea out that we might need to make some changes here is more helpful than just kind of dropping some major news like this on a community that takes something as the token itself as immutable and unchangeable, right? We all recognize that you may need to make changes to it, but if you're going to do so, you have to prepare people very well, right? Because all of a sudden, this foundational principle that they had built their belief system on is now shifting. If you aren't careful, that can cause a lot of problems with the project overall.
Yeah, I mean, to your point too, I'm a business owner, you are a business owner, we have our businesses. And when I look back, I am not where I was when I first started. I've changed a lot, I've evolved a lot. Now, to what you said, my core belief is the same. The integrity of my brand, what I stand for, what I aim to do remains. I am in production, and that's never going to change. I've always said this about Gala, and my friends in the industry disagree with me, but I've always said you can't be a jack of all trades but a master of none, right? There's a lot of skills that I have, and I can. And trust me when I say, and I'm going to take this I'm going to go personal again, all the way through my 20s and 30s, I did everything. I was doing everything. It wasn't until later on in my late 30s and 40s that I honed in on one thing. And you really have to hone in on one thing and give it everything that you have. So I always say, is Gala an entertainment company that is a game publisher, or are they in entertainment music, or are they in entertainment film, or are they in voxel, or are they? And I think it's great that they can do all of it, but longevity and long term, I think Gala needs to focus on one thing. And if that one thing has a token, so be it. That token will be implemented in everything that they do, right? But I just feel like something is always going to suffer when you have too many chefs in the kitchen and too many pots cooking. You know what I mean?
I do. This question of if you have a project that's still finding themselves, yet you've launched a product. In this case, I'm gonna call the token a product. And you sold it for quite a lot of money. And then you come back to your community and you say, hey, we're changing this. It's rational for you to expect some of your community members to not be happy about it. Right. I think that's a fair take. The piece that for me has me really concerned, and this was more recent. So again, I mentioned I was on the fence with the token redeployment process, understanding why. The piece that for me was really concerning is this tweet that I'm going to share right now with our audience from the CEO of Gala. So
you have to read that. My eyes in front of this bright light. I'm seeing
apologies.
stars. It for us. Read it for us.
So Benefactor's statement was, quote, I've said this many times in Discord, and now that Twitter is a thing, who knew? Don't buy nodes. Don't buy NFTs. Don't buy Gala. If you think we are working on your behalf to get you some ROI, you're mistaken. If you're a Roy boys, you can get the fuck out. We are all about building games, music, and film. End quote.
Peace out.
Mic drop. So let's talk about this, Mona. So when you're the CEO and you feel the need to make a statement like this on Twitter, there's a couple different reasons that I think that could be the case. But I'm curious, what's your take? What is a message like this coming from? Like what position, what purpose does he have with sharing this thought to the universe?
I mean, that's a very defensive comment. I mean, he's on the defense mode, right? So people are mad, people are questioning, people are like, what the heck, where did this come from? And here he comes. It's one of those Trump moments where you just need to tell him to just let the marketing handle this situation. I know that a lot of people after that tweet were like, we're out. I mean, you have a huge community. Gala is a huge community. And you're talking about people's tokens and coins. And so that's a very sensitive topic. He definitely didn't handle that right. And I know a lot of people, I don't know whether they did or not, said that they were going to take their tokens and leave, which could be a threat too. But I don't know. How are you seeing it?
I have two minds here. The first one is when I read it initially, my brain immediately went to this is a legal protection measure. He's putting this out to basically be able to say, hey, in the public sphere, we've been saying all along that there's no long-term value to any of our assets and people shouldn't invest in them for financial reasons. It's just all utility. Don't come after us, to whoever, the SEC or CFTC, whoever might be questioning what they've been doing. So that was my first take on it. The second take, though, was even worse, because obviously, like, if you're going to make a statement like that, you need to probably run it by a legal team and by a marketing team. But the second take that I had was,
I don't think he did that.
No, I don't think he did that. I don't think he ran it by legal or marketing, which unfiltered is fine, I guess. But if you're insulting the backbone of your community, the people that have been there presumably from the beginning, and full disclosure, I don't hold any Gala tokens or assets, so I'm pretty indifferent to them as a project from a financial perspective. But if you've got people that have been holding these assets in many cases for years, because this is one of the oldest projects out there, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, by the way, like, you shouldn't expect anything from any of these assets, and if you do, like, you need to get out of our community. That's a pretty good way to get people out of your community, but I'm not sure that's really what you want, because they're going to start just dumping all of their Gala assets and leaving. And to speed that along doesn't seem like the best plan in the middle of the current economy that we're in. My second take was, either you're so frustrated and you're trying to basically wreck the project with a tweet like this, because that's the type of thing you can do, or you don't understand what you've been selling from the beginning, because nobody's paying $10,000 to hold on to a video game asset just to be able to get the chance to play. I'm sorry, you don't understand the product that you've now made millions of dollars off of if this is your take. People can go spend $50 or $80 and buy whatever game they want in Web 2. If you assume that there's no ROI, no long-term hold value, collectible value for any of these items, like, you are clearly confused with who your customers are and what your product is as well. So what's your take on Mr. Benefactor here, Mona?
No, I am totally with you. I think, legally he's covering himself, but at the same time, you don't want to, what's the expression, bite the hand that feeds you, right? Mm-hmm. Because these are the people that have given you those millions of dollars, and you are disrespecting them, and people have left. And look at the charts today. And again, I know the Gala team. I work with the Gala team. I love the Gala team. They're very passionate people, from Bucks to Bitbender to, everyone who's at Gala, they're passionate about Gala, and they work hard for the community. It's tough, man. It's tough because not only we're in the bear market, not only there are ups and downs and volatility, but this is such a new industry. We're working on the bleeding edge. It's a blessing and a curse to be here in this phase. And you have millions of people, thousands of people, whatever. They're looking at you and waiting for you to make one move that you don't like or approve of, right? It's really hard. It really is hard. And the moves that you make dictate the moves that people behind you make, other brands make, right? So it's just, I in a way, I feel for them, because I know that they're here for the community. They're not going to pull the rug here. If Gala pulled a rug, I don't even know. I'm not going to be in this industry. I'm out. It's like, it's just that is not even possible. I would, no. It's just a tough place to be. But I pull for them. I hope that they, are successful with this project, and I hope to see them continue doing these games. But I also see Gala really shining in entertainment. I think Gala has a really good opportunity with music and film. I just want to see them focus on one or two genres, as opposed to being on all of these genres. And I think they definitely have a chance because they have great resources. They have amazing resources. They have, they have funding, and they grew really fast too. I mean, there were 20
Yeah.
people, now there are 400 people. So imagine like what that Slack looks like every day. And they're all over the country, right? I mean, a world, not country, sorry. By the way, I saw a tweet that they were going to move out of the States too. So that's not good news. Anyways, I love Gala. I pull for Gala. I hope that they make it through this.
I do too. Again, I think the more projects that have some success, whatever level that might be, it's better for the sector overall. I think as a leader, you can't let this kind of frustration get the best of you, especially when you're aiming your fire at your own community. The people that are holding your assets and saying like you don't know what you're doing, just leave. I think it's a risky strategy at best. Well, as they say, it's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him, because I'm not so convinced about that.
We're going to find out on the 15th.
We will. So, with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about these communities in general, right? Because one of the other components of being in Web3 for a lot of projects is not only is your community there building with you as a partner for user generated content, they're holding your assets, they're giving you feedback, and they're more involved. In some cases, they're actually governing your project. So when we think about governance in Web3 gaming projects, normally we're going to think of a DAO structure. There's other ways that can exist. But my question to you is DAO governance framework, is this even real in gaming projects today? Do we see this actually working, or is it a facade? What's your take on DAO governance in Web3?
You're better at DAOs than I am, but I will say I'll name Alluvium. I'll say Alluvium, I think, does a really good job with their DAO. Are DAOs perfect yet? No. We still have, when it comes to money and DAOs, there's a disconnect. They still need to figure this out. I love the idea of DAOs, and as you know, I even talked about incorporating at NFT NYC when I spoke, I talked about incorporating DAOs into the next iteration of news, right? Because I think what's the biggest issue in news? Transparency, right? And I think DAO's best feature is they promote transparency, right? So I think they're important in that aspect. They also promote inclusivity and community engagement. So DAOs have really good features that can be incorporated in not just gaming, but anything that we do. There's a coffee shop in Seattle that incorporates DAOs, right? I do love the concept of DAOs. You just got to approach governance with a critical eye and keep checking its effectiveness and adapt it as needed to make sure that's serving the best interest of the project. That's how I see it. But you're way better at this than I am. So let me hear your take.
Yeah, so I definitely don't think that they're necessary, right? This is maybe the first point.
You're saying in gaming.
Yeah, well, I don't think they necessarily are in general in any industry. Like I think there's a lot of advantages, but for me, DAOs are basically shifting in most cases all the way over to the far right side, let's say, of a spectrum between centralization and decentralization. And we say, okay, if something being fully centralized in this monolithic structure is bad, or there's a lot of drawbacks to it, let's say, then clearly the best answer is somewhere way over here on the other side of the continuum. Usually the answer is somewhere in the middle, where there needs to be a combination of both centralized and decentralized structures that are working together with the appropriate structure fitting the purpose of it. And so in this case, I see a lot of Web3 gaming projects that either they don't have DAOs now or they're never planning to incorporate DAOs. And I think they're going to be very successful. I also see some projects that are trying to use DAO structures, and I don't think they're going to be successful. So I tend to be a fan of the concept as long as it's implemented thoughtfully and you know what you're getting. So, for instance, the easiest time making DAOs work are ones that have a fairly contained scope. So my experience, it's much more complicated to have an entire DAO framework that's running all of the governance for your project, right? Probably it's going to be a lot easier if an organization says, we're going to set up a DAO here, and the entire team structure is over here building the product and everything, but this DAO is going to exist only for this niche purpose. And in the case of Civitas, for instance, they've got DAOs that are basically, I'm going to call them guilds, because, and like traditional gaming guilds, because people are going to understand that term more, where you've got a whole bunch of players that are with you in a city, and you're all together in a team or a faction or a guild doing all of your activities together. And they have a DAO structure set up for that lets you go through the voting process and distribution of in-game assets and so forth. That's easier to manage and set up than to try and have a DAO that's actually addressing your overall economy for the studio that's developing the games and your marketing process and partnerships and. So I think the scale of what these projects are building matters a lot too, as to how simple it is to integrate that DAO framework.
I said too that there are elements of DAOs that I love. I love the transparency aspect of it. I love that everyone has a vote in the direction of what they're here to promote and love and play, or even we were talking about, we were in Decentraland and talking about Estee Lauder and the DAO in Estee Lauder, where people get to, women who use makeup, and they get to have their opinion and say in the products that they've continued to use for decades and decades, and Estee Lauder all of a sudden just discontinues. That's like a woman's worst nightmare, by the way, if you didn't know. So, I've been using this for 20 years and you guys just for no reason stopped it. So I love that aspect of it. And I also like I mentioned earlier, I used it in news. I think news could really use some of the elements of DAOs, but we're still far away from that. And I can see the challenges right now. Does gaming need it? No, the gaming has come a long way without DAOs or any structure like that. Are there elements that could help? Yes, definitely. But we're still some ways out from that.
I think that's a great take, Mona. The values that are espoused are ones that the gaming industry desperately does need, right? Transparency, accountability, connection to the gamers, as opposed to connection to the data, which is telling you, here's how I can just pull every last cent out of my customer base. Like those elements that I think DAOs bring really are going to be the ones that I believe are able to revolutionize the industry, and then help us all as humanity see a lot of the value in what blockchain technology can bring. That said, we're in, let's call it year maybe 5 or 6 of DAOs being in existence in any kind of meaningful way, and from a gaming, like a Web3 gaming standpoint, just a few years in. And obviously this expectation that they're going to have miraculously solved all of governance problems that exist in humanity is really not a fair burden to put on them, right? We've got several millennia of human experience building governance structures, and we haven't managed to figure it out yet. Expecting that blockchain will do so in just 2 or 3 years is a little bit unfair. But I do think that a lot of the tech has amazing potential, and we've seen some really, really good experiments that are running. In my personal opinion, having been now in the council for a couple large organizations, DAOs, at the end of the day, it comes down to the people that are in the project as much as anything else. I know we love and want the concept of fully trustless, permissionless, decentralized structures. And that's great from a contract standpoint in terms of financial transactions. When we're talking about people doing the work, you have to have the right people that are there building. And if you do, the structures help to facilitate that, but they're not going to in and of themselves bring success. You can have a perfect structure with imperfect human beings that manage to break it, and all of a sudden, the whole project ends up getting crushed. I think at the end of the day, the question is, who are you attracting to your project? Who's participating in your DAO? what are they actually working towards that matters as much as the overall structure that you're setting up.
Yeah, I mean, and to that, I just keep remembering the news conversation that we were having at NFT NYC and incorporating whether we could incorporate DAOs for their transparency into the news structure. And we were saying, well, what if the members of your DAO are majority right wing, or what if they're majority left wing, or what if they want you to cover a news that's happened in their neighborhood because they all live in this particular neighborhood. And we said, well, yeah, all of those things could happen. And that's why you still have to establish those basic foundations and ethics, right, of your brand, that it cannot be broken, whether that's a smart contract that holds the integrity of the brand, that says these are the rules or the laws that we have to abide by, and then everyone gets to vote, and those votes still have to align with our integrity and our ethics, then we can take a step forward, right? But if there's no structure per se that's based on your morals and values and ethics and the goal of the project, then it's exactly that. It's a mess, right? So I think there's a lot of good elements, but we're still working on it. And I also was going to ask you, actually, with Ethlizards, how do you feel about the DAO there?
Yeah, so I think Ethlizards is a perfect example where we started with the DAO structure for our portfolio activities as we're funding and supporting upcoming Web3 gaming projects. And the DAO framework allows every holder, you can vote based on the lizards that you have. Those votes go for everything from council elections for people that are going to be signing the NDAs and working with these projects, to governance changes around economic structures and the staking platform, to everything like external communication activities and marketing planning. So in general, we have a very robust framework. What we identified was, though, in order for us to expand, we need to have more specialization. So it mirrored a lot of what we saw for Alluvium as well, which is having a general purpose DAO is good if you have a very niche approach. And so I'm going to talk about like DeFi projects, for instance, synthetics, or some like Ethereum. These sort of low level infrastructure projects. Not that it's a small vision, but generally they're very sort of narrowly focused on one thing, as you mentioned. Whereas if you have projects that are multifaceted, like gaming projects, where yes, you've got economic considerations, but you've got the actual gameplay and balancing, you've got marketing, content and so forth to work on, partnerships, all of that, it becomes a little bit more complex to just say, well, everyone's just going to vote on everything, and therefore we're going to get an optimal outcome. It makes more sense from my experience and what we've seen to say, you're going to have targeted sub-DAOs and or targeted councils that work on specific elements that allows that specialization of knowledge and labor and experience that we all know people have to be brought to bear in a more effective way. So that for me is trying to strike that right balance between full centralization and full decentralization. Is right. You want it to be decentralized, but you want to get some of the benefit of having individuals move into roles that they can be super effective.
Well, and like I said, if anyone knows DAOs as Annie, you know DAOs best. But I am pro DAOs. I just think we still have some ways to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. And I think a lot of the criticisms that have been leveled are fair. You see small numbers of holders carrying votes in organizations. There are ways that you can defray that a bit, but generally speaking, it's a question. Are those people that are most financially involved with the project, or that have let's say the most conviction, and they therefore have more of whatever asset is being used? Those are individuals that should have some sort of outsized weight and influence in the project. Is it at the right level for any given one? That kind of depends on the situation. The questions of is it real? And in many cases you'll have situations where the voting is set up in such a way that either it's visible and you'll get these still kind of small groups that are banding together to make factions within a project that vote one way or another. Those, I think, are some of the drawbacks. But again, that comes because you have people involved. And politics are what happen when you get three people in a group together. And you're never going to change that. So I think the best way is just to make it as transparent as possible and really work to harness that approach in a way that works for the project itself.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. For me, DAOs equal transparency. So we had some ETH news as well. I mean, Ethlizard news. I'm sorry, not ETH news. You have something coming up, don't you guys? I was looking in the agenda. What do you guys got coming up?
At the time of recording, we just yesterday finished our vote for our white paper and roadmap. So if you've been following along at home, Ethlizards is preparing to dramatically expand our activities. We're growing our team size, including myself coming on time, as we've mentioned previously. And as part of that, we are now in the phase of preparing for our next epoch of our council. So our portfolio council, which is now its own sub-DAO that has been created, will be running for the next roughly month and a half. And this is a chance for us to see DAO in action as qualified community members come forward and put their name in the hat to be considered for this elite group. So we have a 5-person council that really is responsible for taking all of the early stage projects that we find, evaluating the deal flow from them, and then choosing which ones we're going to support moving forward, with the goal that over the next 2, 3, 4 years, we're the project that's most involved in building the overall ecosystem of Web3 gaming. So super exciting time. We're that's only one pillar now, which is even the cooler part is that we get to build all of that, and then now we've got our own product development that's underway for some major partnerships that we'll announce in the future.
Lots of growth, lots of growth. See, it's good to be a lizard, guys. See that lizard behind Annie? That means he's in the club. He's in for life. He's a lifer. He's a lifer.
It's one of those where the lizard brand is recognizable in the sector now. As I was talking to our community, as I interviewed people up in New York during NFT NYC, of the people that were there that were involved in Web3 gaming specifically, it was about 40% that actually recognized the Ethlizard. I had my Ethlizard shirt on, and they recognized it. And in some cases, they were very familiar with the project itself. So very exciting times to have that community recognition. And we're going to keep growing it. And so again, big shout out to Ethlizards for their sponsorship and support for Gaming on the Block here too.
I love it. I love it. Well, congratulations to you guys. Congratulations to you, Annie. I sure know that if I ever ran a project, I would want Annie on my team. So they're very, very lucky and fortunate to have you. And I'm very happy for the project. So more to come on that. Is there anything else? I'm looking on our agenda. Is there anything else we missed? Did we cover everything? We have TSG coming next week. He'll be back. Are we going to have Kieran on at some point?
Yeah, I don't think we've teased that yet, but we are expecting to have.
Mona just gave it away.
So, if you stay till the end of Gaming on the Block, we always try and deliver a little bit of alpha. So, I think keep that in mind. And whether it's next episode or the one after, I think we'll have a 4th member of the panel to engage with.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to that. I think that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode of Gaming on the Block. A big shout out to our sponsor, Ethlizards and Friends. I'm Mona. You can follow me on Metaverse Express alongside my co-host, Annie. Annie, you're at Animosita #1. And wherever you're tuning in from, we wish you a beautiful evening. Until next time.